will be very much debated in terms of the extent it can help versus human touch. So I can just imagine if Doug is a robot, right? Would I be dealing with global chambers? And that's a fundamental question. So I don't think I'll be dealing with Doug if he's a robot, you know, if he's a machine. So what does that mean, right? But at the same
Absolutely.
time, at the same time, we believe that information is getting extremely abundant, and we need to form as many partnerships as possible. But we have to digest and ingest a lot of information about the industry, about the economy, about the persons, right, about the organizations. So it has to be a balance of both, I think.
Looking forward to the conversation. I think the reason why I wanted Mel here is that she's as good as you get in terms of pulling together alliances and partnerships and JVs, and so she's very knowledgeable and on the subject matter. And then on the artificial intelligence side, you're going to be bringing some new information probably to all of us, and so we're looking forward to seeing how that can help all of us. So really appreciate it, Nazri.
Thank you. And of course we have Raj also. Is Raj here? Hi, Raj.
Raj, are you there?
I thought I saw his name earlier.
Okay. Haven't seen him yet.
But Doug, sorry, your role as a moderator tonight or today will be very much enhanced and extended. I'll be seeking some of your inputs too into the conversation, along with Mel, of course. Hey, Shafqat, welcome back again.
Hi, how are you?
You have been following our events quite actively, yeah?
Yes.
Support. Shafqat is from Bangladesh. He's a very senior figure, pioneer figure in the IT world in Bangladesh. Really, when I say pioneer, it means really pioneer.
Very kind of you.
A lot of technology advancement in Bangladesh since 1980s. So he's part of our network of partnership.
Fantastic. Looking forward to your involvement today.
Thank you.
So it looks like we're right about on time, and I think this is working in Facebook as well, right? And on your page and on the Global Chamber page, and so we're getting good coverage. It's awesome.
Now, which part of the states are you from?
You're probably talking to Mel there, right? Or are you asking her, Kat or Mel?
I'm more impressed with the cat. I myself have 5 cats and 2 bunnies, so I'm a cat lover.
This is Malaika. She's from the Congo. She's a Congo cat.
Congo.
And she successfully immigrated to the United States. Amazing.
Congo and bred in the United States, okay. So which part of the states are you from, Melissa?
Well, I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, but these days I call myself a resident of Casper, Wyoming, and Phoenix, Arizona. So
okay.
Wyoming is my getaway home in the summertime when it's 120 outside, and then Phoenix is my at-home home.
Wow. So does that mean that when you feel in a certain personality or mood, you will go one place over the other? You would choose one place over the other, right?
Exactly.
So you bring your cat along wherever you go, or it stays behind?
Oh, no. She's my fur baby. She goes where I go. She started her life in the diplomatic service with me. Wow. And she used to have 2 big brothers. A Norwegian forest cat and a wild Siberian cat from the steppes in Russia. But unfortunately, they both passed away, so she's the sole survivor.
That's a very interesting cat. The cat should have a book on its own.
Well, actually, Clarence is getting a book. I'm writing a diplomat cat book starring Clarence.
Are you serious or joking?
The cat might have to say
That
something
sounds
to
very
that.
convincing. Yeah.
Just wait until you see the illustrations.
And
You'll
so
absolutely believe Clarence with his suitcase and passport.
then you should sell the story rights to Pixar or Disney, you know.
Absolutely. So that's my plan for becoming a multimillionaire woman of leisure.
Well done, well done. You have that vision.
Yeah, and I'm going to need AI to animate Clarence appropriately for his movie starring role. So might be coming back to you to get the right stuff.
All right. I'll be the AI consultant for your upcoming movie, or rather your cat's upcoming movie, yeah?
Exactly.
So it's interesting how people approach AI with such openness these days, yeah, compared to say 10 years ago, where you're skeptical, it's a dirty subject or dirty topic to talk about. But now we can, have some humor in it, put into some distress situations or happy situations, using AI to find your best mate or best husband or future wife. Yeah, even AI is being used to that extent.
Yeah, but at least here in America, in many circles, AI is still demonized as the coming robots who will steal jobs from humans and make us insignificant and unnecessary.
Yeah, we just had this conversation this morning in Asia, in Singapore, where we noticed that on the Western side, they are very mercenary about the use of AI, where AI is directly used as a hire fire strategy. But in this side of the world, we are using AI as a form of augmentation to the existing human force, the workforce. And we use it for upskilling and reskilling purposes. At least that's the direction of many policymakers and the corporate sectors. You barely hear about how AI is being deployed and adopted by an organization that led to hundreds or even thousands of people being, retrenched. If we retrench people, it's more the economics rather than because of AI per se. So I see that there's certainly a polarized view about the use of AI generally. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's clearly a competitive advantage, East versus West. I mean, I don't want to sound too stereotypical because clearly, particularly larger companies, I think are making good use of AI. I mean, I look at Freeport, what they have been doing with big data and incorporating that with human input, and calling it the nimble process. So that it's not everyone. I think it's mostly people who are not well educated, who think that the robots are coming to steal their jobs. So there's a class divide, unfortunately, in perceptions of AI in America. And of course, the media tends to report on the bad news. So that's why you get so much about the robots are coming,
Put aside the hype and the Hollywood aspects of AI, right? Basically, it's about the smart use of data, right? At the end of the day, you have all the text data, numerical data, video data. What do you do with it, right? You either do it for the betterment of society or productivity for organizations, or use it to abuse or you manipulate people. So it's like money, right? Money can be evil, money can be good. So it's how you deal with it. And data is really what we are dealing with right now. Put aside the hype, put aside the Hollywoodness in AI. What fundamentally you get is basically how to treat data, how to make data work for us, and how to make it smarter for our jobs and our lives. That's all what it means.
Although I have to tell you, Nazri, that it makes me very nervous when you talk about the AI algorithms matching people up, because what makes me nervous about that is human unpredictability could be going down the drain. And I flatter myself that I'm 100% unpredictable and no algorithm could ever capture my depth and richness.
I'm sure we can never replicate the brain fully, right? But certainly what we always advocate is that AI can mimic a certain aspect of a decision, one tiny aspect of the brain relating to a specific human decision. But when it comes to personality, when it comes to values, attitude, we cannot use AI to determine in very specific, accurate measure. But what it does is it provides a personality, like a general sense of your mood, your feeling at that point in time, right?
I think it's the same old story, because what Melissa just said about the concern about AI replacing humans, the same story was when information technology started, that computers would replace humans.
Yes.
So it's just whenever a new technology comes, the same bias or thought process gets reactivated.
Right.
And then over time, they absorb it.
So later on, I will have actually two actual case studies involving a startup comprising of very senior people who comes to another party for partnerships or joint ventures and subsequently fundraising. So you can see how the business plan, their LinkedIn profile, their public profile are being processed and analyzed and being used not to judge, but being used as a measure of what parameters that will suit your own organization, your own style. So it's about not so much a perfect match, but some sensing of what you've done manually, but we just automate the process by the parameters. The other case study involves somebody speaking like this now, right? Somebody talking. Let's say you're talking to me or I'm talking to you over a period of time about a specific topic. So is how do you turn that into a profiling of whether this person is going to be compatible to you with that subject or topic. So there's actually, some interesting stuff that we'll share. We never advocate, and certainly our concluding factor towards the end is that statement is that it's not a foolproof method, but it will give you very accurate, reasonably accurate insights about the person, the organization, based on their public persona and their reaction to a specific.
Nazri, I want you to keep one thing in mind for the future, and maybe you can address it later as you see fit, is the fact that the affordability of AI technology in lower economies or smaller economies or least developed countries. Because people are always concerned about affordability, in the sense that whenever a new technology comes, when you talk blockchain, people say we can't afford it, things like that. So how you can mix the two, I would like you to kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that's as long as we are on cloud, right? Everything can be unitized to a single dollar or a single cent spread over a large volume. So Bangladesh has quite a large population, right? I think it's about 120?
170 million. 170 million.
100?
Wow.
170 million.
170, there you go. When
Wow.
you talk about 170 million, you can't sell people $10 or $50. You have to sell in cents and single unit dollars, right? So it's all about economies of scale and scope. And when AI is democratized on cloud, right, then everything becomes very affordable. Nobody pays capex. Everybody pays on transaction basis and pay as you use. So even the big giants like IBM have already resorted to cloud-based, AI as a service, AI as a platform, right, software as a service, and things like that. So the world is changing. The business models are changing. And everything is all about capability and inclusivity. Yeah, it's not just about lip service, but this has been going on in the last 3 to 4 years in particular.
I agree with you, but the constraint is the uneven distribution of internet access.
Yes.
And country by country, that causes the price disparities. And again, going back to competitive disadvantage, right? It's how poor countries stay poor. Because if the IT distributors don't want to invest because they claim they can't make enough money, then effective modern AI remains out of reach for a good 50% of the global population.
Yeah, the connectivity, I think Bangladesh is quite a model for microfinancing. So when you extend your small amounts of monies to the rural villages, they rely on their GSM base phone, right? Which then transmits or data as well as transacts data, right? Banking data and so on. So AI does not have to depend on the advancement in terms of the types of internet technology per se, but the GSM kind of data that facilitates the transmission of data into the bank. We just use the data that comes ultimately to the bank, and that's where the enhancement can be done. So the collection part can be done at a rural site through the normal network connectivity. But once it gets to the bank as a pool of data lake or pool of database of banking and information, you can basically turn that into a much more advanced situation, advanced analysis. Doug, I think it's past 10, right? So shall we begin?
Let's do that. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. Thank you so much for zooming in today. We really appreciate it. Or if you're on Facebook, thank you for joining us there. My name is Doug Bruhnke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber, and I'm really quite honored and pleased to have such a distinguished group of speakers today and also attendees. So really appreciate that very much. We're going to kick off with Nazri Mood because he's going to be setting the foundational information on a very important topic, joint ventures and partnerships. This is the third in a series of 4 events that we've been discussing. The first one was Scale or Fail, leveraging AI. The second one last week was valuing your business using AI drivers. And then this week, we're going to be talking about joint ventures and partnerships and collaborations and other elements, key elements of business that artificial intelligence can facilitate. Not all of us, including me, by the way, are familiar with how this works. And so I think it's going to be a learning process for certainly many of us, and I'll speak for myself, definitely myself. So Nazri, we'll kick off with you. Nazri is the founder and CEO of MyFinB Group. He's based out of Singapore. And if you ever have a question about artificial intelligence for your business, Nazri is the guy. He's very knowledgeable, a global leader on the topic, and we're really pleased to have you here today, Nazri, talking more about how AI is used in this area.
All right, thank you, Doug. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in to our session on partnerships and venturing using AI and human approaches. Before I begin, I would like to state on the record 3 key points that forms the basis of my presentation today in the next, 10 minutes or so, right? One is about AI is a necessary tool when you deal with a lot of information, a lot of data that is floating around. So when you want to form partnerships, when you want to seek partnerships, you want to evaluate partnerships, you are surrounded by lots of data. In particular, 80% unstructured data, such as text, news, articles, social media, mainstream media information. So you had to Google manually, you had to check and filter lots of information. Some are true, some are false, some are unvalidated. So, and when you want to establish multiple partnerships, then you have to spend more time, more desktop research just to find out how eligible is a partner to you or a joint venture for you in any markets, especially outside of your home country. So AI is a key factor when it comes to managing data. And the question here is, how intelligent should AI be when it comes to helping you make that decision, or at least facilitate the decision-making process in forming partnerships, right? The point number 2 that I want to highlight is that AI does not replace human relations, does not replace human touch, does not replace human engagement process. So the simple analogy that, or even a fact that I would make right now is that if Doug had been a robot, as I mentioned earlier, right? The question is, would I be dealing with him the past, 8-10 years or so that I knew him? And in essence, the answer is no. If he's a robot 5 years ago, 8 years ago, or last year, I certainly want to have a much more, intuitive heuristic, as well as a special human touch with special relations that can, ensure the longevity of my partnership with him. So in no way or way or form that I'm saying that AI replaces human touch, human relation, and human strategies. But what it does, the third point, is that we as producers of AI tech believe in making life simpler, easier, and yet, being able to help you reduce costs, be able to create more impact, be able to identify risks, be able to identify opportunities quicker than what a manual approach would have taken you. So if you form 1 partnership a month, that's fine. But in this world and age, you can technically form 3 to 5 partnerships a day through LinkedIn, through social media, right? Through all forms of digital correspondence and networking, digital networking. You can literally form 3 to 5 partnerships a day. And how do you jump into a partnership? So in a rash manner, in a systematic manner, in a cowboy manner. So the question then becomes, how are you going to use AI in such a way that it can bring you, identify better risks, lower risks, and identify better opportunities? Some of our experience relates to the partnership that we formed that includes Doug on the left side of the slide. You can see that he has been helping us quite a bit and guiding me a lot in terms of relations and networking. I learned a lot from him over the years. And we've also formed formal and official relationships in various parts of the world. Strategically, not as wide-ranging and that deep as Global Chamber, but enough for us to identify the propagators and the ambassadors of AI in the respective countries that we are represented, from Africa, Asia, Australia, down under, and so on, New Zealand, I mean. Along with this partnership that we've built over 14 years, surely we've come across many obstacles, many mistakes, many errors. Some are costly, some are manageable, and certainly there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And one key part that links all my 28 country representation is basically the use of data. Data that is everywhere, data that is very fragmented, data that is so not homogeneous, it's so heterogeneous, right? So somebody from New Zealand is entirely very different from Pakistan or Saudi or Korea or Japan and so on. So we have people from Spain with different culture, different organizational setup, different stage of the maturity of AI in the country. So there are too many variables. How are you going to research everything? Will it take you another 14 years if you're in my shoes? It's too late. But the 14 years that I've accumulated building all these network and partnership, right? I can shorten the process going forward for new ventures, for new partners and new businesses. So later part of the slide, you will see eight key factors that basically form our relationship with all these country partners. So there's a lot of sharing that I would like to make from here. Now, the problem statement is that, as we know, when we want to work with 28 partners, 28 countries, it takes a lot of time, efforts, resources, if we were to embark on a traditional or manual-based methods. What do we mean by traditional manual-based? Emailing, meeting, calling, 4 or 5 meetings every month, right? There'll be lots of queries, a lot of clarification, a lot of to's and fro's, so to speak, in terms of finding out about the business model, finding out about their company's mission and vision, finding out about the complexity of their operations and how to simplify in the home country. So many. So I see no less than 500 variables that needs to be taken into consideration, micro, as well as some are more important than the others, surely. But with all those variables going on, then the need becomes, how do we digitize the approach in order to assess the key factors, whether a partnership is beneficial for one and the other, between both parties. So the background of the AI that we talk about is something that is able to carry out 5 levels of analysis, from describing a particular partner, explaining why the partner strategy is done that way. That means understanding the partner strategy, predicting and mapping out the scenarios, forecasting, as well as mapping out the best case, base case, worst case outcomes. And then the system must be able to recommend action plans in order to address those risks that have been identified in stage 1 and 2, and how to overcome the risks identified in stage 3, which is the prediction part. And last but not least is that once you establish the partnership, the system would help you to keep an eye on the dynamics. Sometimes partnerships fail not because they fail you. Sometimes, we know that there have been 4 or 5 crises in the last decade or so. Some are major over the other. Some macro factors may impact an organization, big or small, and some may even create a ripple effect across the board. So from the unpredictable issues to the predictable issues, right? It basically can spill over to the company that affects the partnership's ability to deliver their so-called deliverables or KPIs. So we talk about AI itself. There are 2 types of AI that we specialize in. Number 1 is the NLG, looking at structured data. And the other one will be NLP, natural language processing, which looks at unstructured data. So there'll be 2 case studies that will be showcased, very personal, very real, and very recent. Like a couple of days ago, and one of it is actually yesterday. So fresh from the oven, we will show you how AI helps to facilitate certain variables, certain factors. In short, some information is better than no information at all. And the information must be of a certain quality that is able to convert the raw information into narrative insights. So case study one. Meanwhile, I would like the admin to stand by with the report, right? So imagine a startup, and this is truly a startup approaching one of our clients with their deck. So there are some basic projected financials. The historical are very limited. The historical data is very limited. You know, in terms of data, in terms of the performance, basically nothing to show, a lot of negatives in terms of their P&L, because as a startup, that's what happens, right, for most of them. And then we look at the companies, the management, so their fantastic business plan, right? When they say fantastic, very glowing, very positive, very optimistic about what the future holds amidst all this COVID pandemic and so on. So the idea is at that very moment when the private equity group, our client, is approached with this question, he has many things to worry about and many projects, many deal flows coming his way. But he felt that maybe this deal is worth looking at, right? So what do we see at the end of the day? So they give us, again, try to imagine a simple business plan, investment memo, numbers, you know, are just purely projections, very limited historical performance. Okay, may I have the report, please? So what we did was, of course, we have to sanitize the data, but this company, this startup deals with, you know, energy, provision of portable energy to, you know, e-bikes, you know, electric cars, electric bikes, and so on, electric skates. So we have this thing called match, right? Matching expert systems for businesses. And what we do is, the data here is real, but we have to tweak the information to preserve the confidentiality. So you can see that with AI, by relying on not just the business plan, but the LinkedIn profile, the social media, the interviews that they had in the media, some comments he had previously for that moment in time, we and based on public information about the countries that they're targeting, such as a Singapore company going over to Indonesia, right, and Cambodia and so on. How do you evaluate the risks associated at a macro and micro level? So this is where, in a simple format, right, in less than a day, depends on the SLA, we get to see the expectation snapshot. Is a business profile aligned with me? Let's say I'm the private equity. So I have my own profile and the partner has their own profile. Two profiles are being evaluated. So there's algorithms that goes behind that simplify the process and explains the rationale for more advanced analysis. So are you aligned? Is the business profile of the target company aligned with you? Even to form a joint venture, to form a partnership with them, or to invest in them. So how compatible is their business model versus your portfolio and your business model of investing into the energy and portable energy sector? And what's the level of the industry, risk levels of the industry in the transportation, in the e-bikes, in the energy sector? And is there a values and cultural fit between both of you? Again, it sounds very simple, but behind there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of algorithms that basically form the basis of these answers. Then we analyze the economy. So in a snapshot, you get to see, you know, whether it's the right time, whether number one is the right party to deal with. Number two, is that how aligned? Number three, is it the right timing to go into this? Number four, is it the right valuation at the right cost? And what's the risk associated with this? Okay, so you can see that upon submission, then we can basically analyze the profile. Because let's say I'm the evaluator and the potential partner, you can basically do the summary of the personality without anyone having to fill out their questionnaires or any form of interviews. So basically, we can compare how each person differs from the other. Again, there's no perfect science to it, but it's based on the big 5 values personality tests that is quite universal, quite globally applied elsewhere. I didn't invent the global, what do you call that, big 5 personality, but this is one of those tests where you can look at the intensity, the types of language being used, being expressed, opinions being formed, and collected over a period of time. It can become a very reasonable picture of who you are and what you stand for. And then you can compare the, the similarities and differences between the percentile of each of the attributes of the big five. And from here, you can go deeper if you want to, in terms of how big a gap or how close a gap. Then you can basically form an assessment, or you know how to deal with the person if he's a very introvert, extrovert, without even interviewing the person yet. Of course, when you interview the person in the second case study, when he starts talking, you can even form an opinion about it, just like you form a biased opinion of someone versus the other. Likewise, the system may have that element of bias, right? But at least it's based on certain set of parameters that humans will set. Then, of course, we can pull out information in terms of business risks associated with the industry. So if you were to partner with someone in a particular industry, right, in a particular sector, what are the top 10 key risks that you should consider, okay, as part of the partnering agreement? So these are things that we do manually, right? These are things that we've done traditionally anyway, but not as systematic as you would like to. But let's say for me, if I developed this 10 years ago, right, I think my 14 years will be shortened to less than a year. I'll be screening more partners quickly. I'll be marrying more partners very quickly. And I have less risk, or rather risk that I've been identified upfront. Right, so we can see these other things. Then if you are a Singapore company going to Indonesia, we have an AI system that's able to evaluate based on the ease of doing business by World Bank, convert the score into a rating, convert the rating into a required market ROI, return on investment. So the system takes into account World Bank's data, takes into account your own assessment, your own knowledge of the market, your own strength, your own weaknesses, and then mathematically calculate and estimate the risk, the minimum, returns required for all the risks that you are exposed to. So you know that if you start doing this, your minimum ROI is at least 22% to go to Indonesia, as opposed to, say, Cambodia or Vietnam, and so on and so forth, right? So there are, all these things will change as the variables change. And what happens today needs to be updated, say, 3 months later, right? And things change all the time. So of course, you can do multiple economic outlook. You can use AI to determine the sentiment, the situation, the factors in a snapshot. What is the positive, negative impact on some of the key factors that may impact the industry subsequently and the organizations eventually. Then you can see the sentiment about the electric motorcycles, all right, the electric bikes. You can see that it's slightly positive on the global front. Yeah, this is the global news. But you can see that later on the local front, like Indonesia, which is not published here, it's more negative than positive. Based on the business plan, assuming a base case scenario, we don't take the full best case, but this is the base case. That means you take 50% of the estimate. So you will start doing the analysis in terms of the financials projections that you give. So these are the, one aspect that you can use AI in a systematic, objective, facts and figures driven with some textual information from reliable news, and then map it out into sentiment and fundamentals. Okay, and can I have the deck, please? Moving on very quickly. The second case study is a little bit more lighthearted. Why do I say that? So imagine you are speaking with me, or somebody speaking to you over the phone, over the computer, over Zoom, right? And you recorded a conversation and you install a speech-to-text engine. Okay, speech-to-text engine. That means you as a human, you will process the text that comes to your brain. You'll process the information that goes to your brain, right? In terms of facts, figures, feeling, emotion, connectivity, all dumped into one. So the idea is, can I have the sample report for case study 2? So this actually happened just yesterday. The other one happened about 2 to 3 days ago. So how do you convert speech to text conversation like this? Okay. Let me take over. A lot of information. So this is barring the sentence construction and some grammatical errors and a little bit of verbosity in certain areas, because they literally verbatim took all the notes from you, right? From your voice. So it converts automatically into text. With this text information, what happens next? You can start forming the sentiment, the tone of the conversation. You can form a word cloud about what has been talked about. You can form a summary of what has been said. You can form a word links and relationship purely from that conversation. All these are purely taken from the verbal conversation, right? And then you can see the word frequency that happens. But I would like to bring your attention to the next page, which is quite interesting. So the person who talks to you, again, with a Sunburst Big 5 personality test, it converts that conversation into a set of information about yourself, about that particular person, in relation to a specific topic, subject, and situation. This person at this point in time is no other than yours truly. This is me actually talking to a group of analysts on how to handle a particular task and how to solve a particular problem in relating to stock investment. Okay, the rules of stock investing using technical and fundamental analysis. So you can see that the tone, the sentences are used, right? The construction, right? The semantics, syntax are all captured by the system and turned into a set of analysis and sunbursts of my personality for this particular topic. And this is the percentile, and so on. So we've seen two examples. Can I have the deck back, please? Thank you. So we've seen two examples. One is a startup coming to you with a set of structured and unstructured information. The other case involves somebody who just speaks to you verbally, right? But you have it recorded, transliterated, or transposed into text, and then you use the text to basically form some analysis and information about it. Now, moving on to my last slide, last two slides. Let me see. Yeah, last two slides is that within the use of AI, traditional, we believe in having a blended approach. And there are top 8 strategies that form the basis of our AI-based decisioning. Number one is for us to form successful partnerships and JVs from our own experience in those countries that we've been over the decade. We believe that the economics of the partnership is very important and needs to be laid out upfront. Second will be the capability and the profile and compatibility of partners. Third will be the ability of for the partners to support pre and post sales in the country itself that we are representing. Fourth will be the commitment in terms of resource, time, right, in pre and post project implementation. So some partners are very good in getting deal flows, right? Some are very good in executing. Some are good in both, but some could be, limited because of the infra and resources and their own core primary business model that will limit their ability to do the end-to-end solution for point 4, right? And 5 is the extent of communication and feedback loop. 6 will be the ability of the partner to track and monitor the milestones in the in-country. 7 will be to manage everything. There will always be a black swan happening, right? Some use wild swan models, some call it black swan, some call it Murphy's Law. So there will always be exceptions to what we plan to do. And the question here is, how do we deal with those exceptions and what sort of working principles ultimately prevail? And that becomes a sort of protocol. Last but not least is the ability of the country partners to create a multiplier effect. So when you have all these 8 factors, right, and you are in 28 countries and you have various socio-political, socio-economic, multiple industry forces, and one big tsunami of COVID comes in, how do you handle, how do you monitor, how do you identify the opportunities and risks manually? Does it mean that you have to hire 500 people to manage this? Or do you use one smart AI system that's able to gather what sort of incentive would be suitable for the other party? What sort of profile would be accurately or reasonably form a picture of their style, working style? How about the risk in the country and their risk of deliverable, assuming they have 2-man show or they have 50-man show, right? And then they are very strong in certain areas, but not strong in the other areas. What is the implications on that? So all in all, we believe that, as my last slide, bottom line is blending human and AI approaches are highly necessary. Maybe not 10 years ago, maybe we needed that learning curve. Maybe we needed to go through all the hard knocks, the school of hard knocks. But beyond and after the school of hard knocks, surely we want to learn something, and we have learned something and built something that will be addressing some of our pain points in the past, right? And so that we be dealing with the future pain points and innovate from there on. And parameters that are embedded in the AI serve as guidelines, and they're not foolproof. In fact, through machine learning, they're continuously learning how we think, how we act, how we behave, the risks that we make, the returns that we achieve or fail to achieve, right? So there will always be a a reasoning behind everything. So we have machines to rationalize it, not through bias or fear or apprehension or ego, but it will call a spade, right? And explain why it's like that. So we have to be very humble enough to accept some of these judgment or views given by AI so that we can improve ourselves going forward. So all in all, sounds, the way I make it sound as if JV and partnership is very simple. It's not, right? I never claim that it's simple, but it's just that you're dealing with lots of data, lots of invisible and non-visible factors. Both are actually mean the same. That means visible and non-visible factors, especially in international settings. So I learned a lot, and truly, I'm sure Melissa and Doug have a lot to share based on their profile and, across countries, across metropolitans, and across regions and states. So, and outside of the US, we all face with the many challenges of how to deal with China, how to deal with India, how do you deal with, Vietnam, for example, or Indonesia. So there are many factors that need to be considered for American business to deal with Asian businesses, for Asian businesses to deal with Western as well as European partners like Raj, right? So at the end of the day, to me, having something solid, robust, systematic, okay, it is very necessary in today's world. Okay, so with that, it boils down to my earlier factors. Number one, AI is a means to manage data smartly. Number two, AI does not replace human beings when it comes to human relations. Number three is that AI does deliver specific objectives like turnaround time, identify risks, macro and micro risks, and help you to compute the minimum ROI required, taking into account the risk factors at the organizational level as well as at the macro level. So with that, thank you very much for listening in. Over to you, Doug.
Thank you, Nazri. Just one quick question on the case studies that you shared. Presumably, I think you said this, but it appears that there's quite a wet process. You're basically taking this data from the system, but you're looking at the data, you're making some conclusions, you're probably making corrections. Tell us about what that process looks like in terms of when the system is telling you something, how do you deal with it? What's that process look like? Is it, like is it a long process? Is it, I guess it depends on what it is, but tell us a little bit more, maybe in the context of those two examples that you shared.
Sure, Doc. So in this case, a startup comprising of very seasoned business people comes to you with an impressive investment memo, impressive business plan. When you look at it, right, it's all well written, well formatted, well thought of, and everything looks rosy, right? So imagine on one day when somebody like a PE group is very busy, right, with many issues. So you flip through it, and you have this human affinity towards something that's so well written, well presented, and it really covers all track. So as a human, you tend, especially covered with fatigue or loaded with volumes, you tend to miss out certain factors. Even for me, as a human, when I look at the plan, it was very impressive. And then I checked it out. I say, hey, before I put it into the machine, right, tell me some little background about them. Oh, they hired a specialist basically to advise them, and very seasoned specialist that involves in listing of this company, listing of that company, so on and so forth, right? So everything about them is really nice on paper, but nothing there talks about the risks, nothing there talks about the scenarios if it turns bad, and nobody highlighted about the fact that it's a capital intensive business that burns a lot of cash and very highly dependent on continuous funding to keep it afloat, because it'll take a while before sales come in. And here you are looking for the first 5 million. So your 5 million will be burned very, very fast. That's what, after the fact, after you put the information into the machine, it starts to highlight all these things. And it provides a new dimension altogether. So your perspective goes from being very optimistic and very, bullish about such a startup going to be the next Uber or Grab. It becomes more cautious. Not saying no to the investment, but you start thinking about, okay, now there's a returns part, now there's a risk part. Let's balance our perspective. So that was the immediate reaction from the client, from my side as a human, right? We make human decisions too. But when the machine starts coming in, it provides a different perspective of how risks and returns are being formulated. And unless you spend full time 7 days looking at all these and decipher all the, the statements and the numbers, when you start looking at it on a cursory basis or even sit down for half an hour, you will not get the same depth and breadth of what the machine would have helped you with. So the machine does not have to decide, but the machine helps you to think about the top 10 risks, the top 10 implications, and the likelihood of you burning your money if there's no continuity of funding. That's the most basic fundamental output that comes out of it.
Okay.
That's the result from the first case study.
That's great. I'd like to get Raj and Mel to comment on this as well. Mel, we have here because she's as good as you get in terms of setting up partnerships and alliances. She's been doing it for her entire career, in the U.S. and in Africa and around the world. She's through her foreign service work has lived in, I think, 8 cities around the world, if I remember correctly, but certainly many and very diverse. And Mel, you've done a lot of this like I have, on your own, right? In your own head. So what's your reaction to seeing this as a potential facilitator for these opportunities?
Thanks, Doug. I absolutely love it. I'm a firm believer in more analytics are better, and particularly when you can couple analytics with instinct. Because one of the big hurdles for putting together successful joint ventures is knowing the partner. And as Nazri mentioned, the existing model, well, pre-COVID, the existing model involved lots of trips to a country. Let's just say someone was interested in investing in Ethiopia. So many trips to Ethiopia to meet with that company, to meet with government officials, to look at infrastructure, to look at the banking system, to look at monetary regulations. The kind of tool that Nazri is talking about shortcuts all of that process tremendously. So I see that as the first advantage. The second advantage that I see is that, particularly for startups, access to capital is frequently a limiting factor. I see this as a potential for opening up a global capital market. So even if your startup is based in the US, you are potentially able to access financing that is interested in your sort of product, even if the financing is based in Malaysia or if the financing is based in Nigeria. And you're able to make a reasoned decision about the risk factors of bringing in foreign investment to help your organization grow. So I see that as a second advantage and a very compelling one, because the obverse is also true. Frequently, there are American investors who would like to invest in an early stage product in another country, but they're not aware that that early stage product exists. And if it comes to their attention, then again, it opens up the gateway for an entrepreneur in the Democratic Republic of Congo to have a US investor backing his or her product and product growth, and therefore market access. Because that's a third important flow-through point. When you're looking at joint venture possibilities, you need to look down the line and say, what about market access? Two-way market access in the future. Because it's one thing to say, oh, great, I want to partner with this company in the DRC. I'm going to use that one as a specific example at this point because I know that particular African market best. Well, one problem with the DRC and the US at this moment in time is Congo is not a member of AGOA, which is, for those who may not know it, it's essentially the preferential trade package between the US and Africa. And DRC is not a member of that because of human rights and corruption concerns. So if you are looking to form a joint venture with a company in the DRC, and your downstream objective is to be able to import into the US a product, let's say avocados. I love the avocados in the Congo. They're gigantic, they are savory, and I would kill to have them in markets in the US. But at the moment, it's not actually possible for a U.S. importer to bring in those avocados from the U.S. because Congo is not a member of AGOA. So therefore, in this hypothetical joint venture scenario, the U.S. investor would be better advised to look at avocados out of South Africa or out of Namibia or out of Nigeria. Any of those three countervailing examples would be good. But I want to come back to what Nazri said about AI is a facilitating tool. It doesn't replace the human connectivity. It doesn't replace that human instinct. Because let's come back to this issue of corruption. There was a question in the chat room about, how can there be more American investment in Africa, and what's the big block? The big block is corruption. And when an American investor looks at the continent, they look at the continent first through the perspective lens of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And this is true for any country around the world. It can be equally as true for Vietnam as it is for Namibia, because that's a driving concern for U.S. businesses and U.S. investors looking to fertilize joint ventures. What is that nation's position on the United Nations list that monitors the prevalence of corruption? So you have the United Nations list, which is one objective standard. I think that Nazri's tool can provide a lot of additional factors that can break down that statistic, because corruption is not all pervasive and it's not equal across industrial sectors. So, if you're in mining and you're in Africa, corruption should be your number one concern. But if you're in agriculture in Africa, corruption shouldn't be your number one concern. So I think that the kind of AI interaction that Nazri has just told us about can be a very important tool in trying to guide investors in refining where their concerns should be placed. Is it actually a highly relevant risk factor for your particular industry, or is it less so? And I think that winnowing process is another potential gateway to opening that global financial market and really fertilizing economic growth. And we desperately need that post-COVID. Every country on the planet has been crushed by this virus. And every country in the world is going to need more extensive financial flows, more extensive trade, bigger and better joint venture and capital movement, and bigger and better partnerships for progress, because that is fundamentally what I think we need post-COVID for a global recovery. Nazri's tool could be a very important aspect of that. I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to stop there for the moment, but very happy for questions. I can get more specific on examples that people would like.
Great, Mel. Thank you. Really good information. We have about 10 minutes to go, and I definitely want to get Raj's input. Raj, hi. How are you? Given your deep expertise in AI, what are some of your reactions to what you've heard so far?
Yeah, definitely. It's thank you first of all for that call today. It was really great to hear from Nazri, and I've seen the tool. We had 2 hours conversations, I think, last week. That was great to actually see what's been doing. Also, what Mel's ideas also about, the transparency and also what we can able to do that, right? It's really great. I think the key element also I would like to just point out is that for sure, there is almost a stigma about AI, replacing jobs or replacing humans. It's something we've been talking about that before, right? I think any new technology comes in, back in the day, like, when the ATMs comes in, people were talking about, that will replace cashiers, when the IT technology came in, that will replace humans. It will always the theme for the rest of, our lives. But actually, if you look at the other side, I think with the amount of data, what we're looking for right now, like Nazri has mentioned as well, with unstructured data and structured data, it's humanly impossible for us to do the task, right? So this is where technologies like AI could really be an enabler, obviously to augment some of the things what we do, to definitely make the human lives better, and also we can able to do creative things, right? And obviously we are not there yet in the AI space where they can think themselves, and also being that human element, which is like empathy and also other kind of things, right? This is definitely not there yet. I think this is where we all humans as we are, and technology is just enabler, right? So it could be AI, could be somewhere blockchain, and any other technologies also. It's just that the way it is there as well. And that's just yeah, my view of it. And also the transparency. I think one more important thing I would like to highlight is that explainable AI, as we all kind of thinking about, that is kind of a most bigger topic now about AI should be able to explain how they made a decision, right? It's a prediction or maybe something, an anomaly. It's been kind of a black box thinking so far, some of the financial services and the kind of themes. And this is where we are really passionately looking at how do we make it better, how it's explainable in a way that we made it. Could be a face recognition algorithm, or could be in a prediction model like a fraud, like a loan sanctioning or anything like that. This is fundamentally the next phase of AI is evolving in that explainability side. And I'm sure, I think, in the next few years, we'll really see a lot of potential in there as well. If you don't mind, I'll show you something as well to complement what Nazri's actual work is happening as well on the screen, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So you can see my screen. Can you see the screen here?
Yep.
So if you remember Nazri's slide, what they're doing is NLG, which is natural language generation, right? Which is looking at a lot of structured data, looking at, unstructured data as well, like reports and everything, to look at what's fundamentally happening. And of course, that actually will save a lot of time, and also the report analysis and everything for your decision makers to look at it. At the same time, when you look at a lot of unstructured data like NLP, which is actually other part of what Nazri has mentioned, that here what we're trying to do is that we can analyze any topic, actually really an example. Now we can look at more important topic about Black Lives Matter, right? Kind of more of a topic happening right now. So we can analyze the information happening in the social media and also all the articles right now, and we'll pull up the information in a matter of 3 to 4 seconds. You can really see how the context has been happening. And so in terms of the sentiments, in terms of the categorization of the what people's issues are, and also, from different countries where you can look at, and also what people are talking, articles are talking about, all the way from your Bloombergs to Al Jazeera to, many different channels across the world, from the US to the UK to Asia. And also the people's opinion about as well, like an example, what people thinking about, this current topic, right? These are really powerful to understand the common trends, and as well, we're giving the powerful sentiment as well as the key categorization for the data evolving from social media and also articles, which can actually help organizations and also people to look at and actually be proactive, and also understand the risk position, and also what is the customers really want, what are the citizens are really talking about. And this will really empower organizations as well as authorities too. And you can talk about, obviously, you can talk about, people or a company like IBM, anything like that. It's just that is the technology what we've developed in LP to help looking at what's going on in the current reality of, about a topic, a company, or anything like that. I briefly shared last time. I thought maybe it would be useful to understand how powerfully the technology can be useful to get the information in a matter of a few seconds using AI and NLP in the background of it. To get that. And otherwise, humanly, if you don't have that, what happens is, like, you have to manually look at all the articles, analyze all the articles, what it is, and it takes a lot of time, right? So it actually saves you time. That's what it is doing, and it's an enabler how to use the time and to do something productive, right? In emerging risk, or maybe anything like COVID-19, anything can be done. So just a quick glimpse of how the technology can really be enabled, and also can able to help people to make some real practical decisions about, as we can all see, COVID-19's situation has been increasing. Something happened yesterday. Until that, it was kind of dropping off. I think, yeah, these are kind of some fundamental things you can monitor with technology. So with that, I'll leave that. And of course, any questions, we can always talk about it. And thank you.
Thank you, Raj. I do want to mention that our next session in 2 weeks will include an artificial intelligence company out of Montreal that's a member of Global Chamber. We use their technology to make matches, if you will, to connect members to potential clients. And it was interesting to hear particularly Nazri talk about how AI can facilitate that conversation and look through the background to see whether there's a match or not. So I'm curious to see now, that company's called Gazelle.ai, curious to see how they view it, because we're using it as a kind of a more simple, straightforward, like, you know, is this a client for this company? You know, matching it up that way. I think what the group today has been talking about is a more complex, you know, putting together a partnership or an alliance or a JV has a level of complexity that's higher. But on a simpler level, just matching up somebody to potential clients, we're using that today and having some really good success. So I'm curious to see how they match up to what we've talked about today. We only have about 2 or 3 minutes left in the hour. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go around the room, maybe get 30 to 60 seconds each from Mel and Nazri and Raj to wrap up. And so Raj, would you like to go first?
Yeah, definitely. I think just as I briefly summarized, someone mentioned just before the call that don't think that AI is only useful for big players like Google, Apple's, and these things, but actually now with the democratization of AI, that everything is available in the cloud and cloud landscapes, and also, you know, it's all kind of more relatively open book when you use GCP or AWS or this kind of platforms. I think it's better to start looking at, you know, how AI can able to analyze your customers' insights, your customers' issues, sentiments, and also things about the risk in COVID-19. There are many use cases you can use that. You can slowly start, you know, at a very starting scale, and then obviously you can ramp up that way. It's not that in the hands of the bigger people, I would say. And also, of course, it is augmenting you know, some of the humans, you know, our time, and also increasing the efficiency. There are many things, and think that way. And of course, humans always stand out better, and also we will just go through this stage, right? I think that's my take on it. And be safe, and so enjoy the summertime if you're out of lockdown.
Sounds good. Thank you, Raj. Mel, any closing comments?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that while it's accessible to everyone, I think that it's important to remember that it also requires a degree of personal experience to be able to do a full and accurate interpretation of the data that the tool delivers to you. And that's where human experience and human relationships continue to remain a paramount factor, because the data is only as good as the person who's reading it. And particularly when it comes to being able to find that right partner, I stand by my instinct that the data may occasionally point you in one direction, but if your instinct tells you another, then you need to sit down and really think about it twice. Because at the end of the day, it's still about doing business with people that you can trust and who believe in what you believe in. And so use that data wisely and bring your experience to the table as a filter. Thanks.
Thank you, Mel. Nazri, I see you're answering some of the questions that are out there. Thank you very much. How about you? What closing comments do you have?
Yeah, thanks, Doc. I think the focus is all about what sort of approach are we pursuing now in this new normal, the new world order, in the post-COVID era? Do we want to still adopt the traditional good old ways of forming joint ventures and partnerships? Or do you think that there are ways to actually expedite, accelerate, and spend more time on what matters most in JVs and partnerships, which is the outcome, right? So we've been doing traditional approach. We've been focused on the process. We've been focused on the parameters. We've been focusing on digesting and ingesting information about whether the JV or partnerships work best for us. That has always been the case, as I had gone through myself. Now, with this new normal, the question that we need to ourselves is, with all variables moving around, okay, every day, every hour, every week, we need to always ingest new information. From ingestion, we need to digest it. From the digestion, we need to turn it into a decision, right? And since there are so many variables and so many markets that we need to break down, so many market barriers that we need to break down to pursue new opportunities, your own clients that used to be providing you your income will no longer be able to provide you that survival factor, right? So you need to look for new customers, new clientele, new markets. So you are dealing with multiple, various risks. So the traditional way means you spend more time analyzing, parameterizing, if there's such a word, understanding the criteria, evaluating. But the new approach means that all that will be done by the machines, okay, and then presented to you a 360-degree perspective about what you should be looking at, where are the typical risks, all coming from facts and figures and statistics, as well as traceable by the source of information, traceable by the type of transactions that they did, traceable by the comments that they make. So it gives you the added advantage, okay, of using what people say, what people do, how the operating environment is like, right, into a silver platter, okay, in a compressed, condensed manner, and focus on the 20% that matters 80%, focus on 20 that matters 80% of the time. So in such a way, I strongly believe, and through my own experience and the sufferings that we went through, AI does help, right? And that comes from the data that's either structured or unstructured. And when we form JVs and partners, the new method would be more relevant, more effective, and much shorter period than I had gone through all the 3-4 crises like the past decade or so. It shortens the whole risk identification and opportunities and even pivoting. It becomes my source of data for remodeling restructuring my business model as a result. So that's helped me a lot, and I hope that people who tune in this would take baby steps to understand how AI could actually help them in their partnering activities. Thank you, Doug. It's a little bit long, but I sincerely hope that we don't view AI as an enemy, but it's a tool to help facilitate relationships, not to replace relationships. Thank you.
No question. Nazri Mood, MyFinB, Raj Muppala, AInfinity, and Melissa Sanderson of Mel Sanderson Consulting. Really appreciate your expertise and sharing your thoughts today. Really important topic. Our next conversation is in 2 weeks, same time, same station, regarding artificial intelligence and benchmarking. So we hope you'll join us then. And the company that I mentioned, Gazelle.ai, will be one of the speakers at that point. So I'm interested to hear more from them because of our own experience with using AI to help our members. So thanks, everybody. You have a good rest of your evening in Singapore. And wherever you are, have a great rest of your Friday and weekend. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye, Mel. Bye, Shafqat, and bye, Raj. And
Bye.
Hey, thank you, Nazri.
Sleep well.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.